So how are you supposed to make the whole world into an animal shelter and at the same time be able to understand that people do not pay for things unless there is value behind it and vice versa? And at the same time, how do you get free assets in the world? By making guesstimations and estimates. How can you stack those into assets? Stay till the end to find out. Welcome to the news. So how are we supposed to be able to try to develop this connection? It is, first of all, fundamentally corresponding to the animal shelter market. We're corresponding it to the animal shelter market and how we want to try to make the whole world into an animal rescue market by being able to bring the actual intrinsic value of the animal shelter world into the actual retail value of the animal shelter energy, to bring that first and foremost to the spectrum of focus in the animal shelter industry. So in essence, it is obvious that it corresponds to a business in the animal shelter industry. An animal shelter is a business first and foremost, just like a grocery store. In essence, their stock is animals. Unfortunately, it's seen that way, and if their stock isn't selling ultimately, that they discard it, and that's sort of how the process sort of works and flows these days. And unfortunately, in this respect, we're trying to make a parallel to be able to give more hope to these animals in these animal shelters by drawing a parallel to Airbnb, to the Airbnb market. How are we supposed to try to do that? We actually wanted to hopefully, ideally, scale this process to the whole world so that in essence, the idea and the commodification and the idea of animal energy itself being more of a commodity is something that we could try to bring to market, bring more value to market. And how do we want to do that? Well, in essence, we want to be able to try to bring attention and awareness to the fact that in essence people do not see value in certain items, especially in America, the United States, unless it is marketed, unless certain products are marketed. So in essence, once invention happens, once the idea is unique in a certain marketplace, in essence, for things to take value in a marketplace, it's necessary for that marketplace to be able to be marketed in a certain fashion, to be able to justify the value of a certain item, so to speak. For example, and in the instance and the element that corresponds to animal energy, which is in essence the actual gift or the actual process, the actual value proposition within the animal industry, it is relevant that in essence there is not an ability for animals to speak for themselves, to be able to express their value or sell themselves because they can't speak in essence. So in essence, the animal industry right now is not one that is at its highest peak because animal energy is not one at the current time where it's not relevant and it's not relayed well effectively what the animal energy value is in the animal energy industry, because in essence these animal shelters, they're selling these dogs more or less in the form of adoption fees to be able to also pay for the services that correspond to the counties and such things that are paying for these industry for the industry to go forward and the tools and such things to be able to continue. But in the essence of a business, to be able to connect it like Airbnb, in essence, to be able to connect it like more or less the real estate market, for example, it's necessary to be able to try to develop a better understanding of the value of animals and pets to begin with. The pet industry, which corresponds to actual pets, basically by giving them a price, by increasing their price, increasing their value, because people, especially in this country, are not necessarily connecting or able to connect the idea of value with certain animals and animal shelters unless, in essence, you correspond to them, the direct ability for them to be able to pay more money. If people pay more money, if people spend more money, if people are spending more money, then they have the ability to be able to recognize price. If they have the ability to recognize price, then they see that there's more value. It's one thing or another. It's one thing before another, ultimately. If there's no price, like fostering, for example, is something that corresponds to the middle term of charging more money in the animal industry, because in essence, it's not to say that the adoption fees are too low. It's to say that in essence, there's three tiers, in essence, like in the Airbnb market, like an apartment rental, for example. The middle term is renting an apartment for a couple months, for example. So we're corresponding and combining how to raise the prices in the animal industry to be able to bring more life to the animal industry so that these processes are not discarded, just like real estate in essence. It's like reviving real estate that was not used in the real estate market. We're just trying to do that for animals so that animal shelters do not discard of the dogs and cats and animals in essence, because in essence this also corresponds to the rest of the world, because there are animal shelters in Europe, for example, but it's different in process in every single country. So we want to be able to try to connect it in a similar alignment to the real estate market so that in essence it all stands straight and in line across the world, flush and fluid, so we can make like somewhat of a Airbnb type of a concept, type of a mindset to be able to connect this ability, this energy, to be able to reframe and re-reference this merchandise as animals, all these animals around the world that connect to these animal shelters in essence, to be able to in essence make more effective merchandise sales by connecting it to the Airbnb market. by having short-term rentals, for example, introducing short-term rentals and also the middle-term rentals of fostering as something that people can pay money for in essence, because people might want a dog, for example, and it's just like leasing a car to own it. Basically, you can lease a dog to own it, more or less, and that's not a bad, terrible conceptual problem, because by having that service and framing that service, because animal shelters are kind of lazy in essence for trying to develop these different types of services, they just haven't thought through the process to be able to make these different odds and ends available, because this value has not been necessarily seen as something that's more valuable. It's just not, the marketplace has not necessarily been analyzed in this fashion. So that's why we're trying to reframe the concept of the whole purpose of this animal industry energy to begin with as the fundamental product that corresponds to this animal shelter industry, and be able to spread this and scale this across the whole world. So in essence, this ability to be able to make a platform like Airbnb makes it a fluid and flush process, so that in essence, dogs and cats and animals have a controlled system and environment among the ability to live among humans in the globe, among our societies that are growing and glowing as time passes, to be able to have short-term rentals in essence. So in essence, we're trying to close the gap by connecting three different layers in essence with the real estate market. The first one is being able to buy a house, which is like adopting a dog, a pet. A pet, for example, is like you pay the adoption fee and then you own it, basically, which corresponds to, typical ownership, and that's one fee up front. And that's, obviously not that expensive. But the middle term is fostering. So being able to foster can then also alleviate the rescues of having to pay that foster cost, basically by having that middle term, that middle tier of renting a dog, like renting an apartment, have a middle term lease, which you can also lease it to own it as well at the same time, which is also corresponds to a better process anyway, because the purpose is to get them out of the shelters, basically. But the one that's the most lucrative is the one that's not even been acknowledged ever, I don't think, is the shortest term rentals, in essence, where you can get a rental just like an Airbnb in essence, and you can rent it for a day or a short time to be able to have volunteers, be able to get the benefits and the bonus, just like people, to be able to get the bonus of getting paid basically to show up and make appearances, having animals show up and make appearances in different places in different ways, to be able to connect with that short-term rental market, is able to connect and close the gap on the value of the actual animals themselves in animal shelters, because just like merchandise in essence in a grocery store, and all, just like houses and different aspects of real estate, just like in co-working spaces in real estate that's been left behind in offices in the past, before they made WeWork, in essence, they made shorter-term rentals in essence for like WeWork, for example, and also things just like Airbnb and VRBO for shorter-term rentals for the animal industry, to be able to keep more pets alive, just like other real estate has gone to waste, like aspects of time and real estate and money has gone out the window for real estate, but these animals are actually losing their lives in many instances, and so we should be able to try to recollect these processes by recollecting and reconnecting these animals to life, by being able to bring them back, have more alternatives, by being able to charge people money so that they realize that the value is there to begin with, and there's no value there right now because people aren't being charged necessarily money in the fostering markets. People can foster animals for free in essence, and rescues are the ones footing the bills in essence. So rescues are not that lucrative of businesses, but rescues should get more money because they're doing a lot of work to try to keep animals alive, because shelters oftentimes don't even allow for fostering to happen. So the rescues are kind of like middlemen to be able to, in the real estate market, for example, and they should be like brokers, be compensated in essence for their efforts and their processes and time and efforts and energy. And in essence, there's a lot of value that comes from animals. So realistically, it all makes sense to have the circular, cyclical cycle of a sense to be able to reward and give more value to the animals themselves as the animal industry, at the same time to be able to reward this whole process for being dogs and cats and animals, which shed light and happiness and joy consistently in many ways, way more than more other humans have the ability to ever do. And so that is why cat videos got huge, and that is why animals are praised in life, and that is why sometimes people like animals more than they do other humans. So for that reason, they have a value, and that value is not recognized in the business world, even though animal shelters are businesses. So that's the whole goal of today's episode, is to be able to make a global Airbnb out of the animal industry, and also be able to, just like there's not hotels that exist in other places in the world, be able to build animal shelters in other places in the world, to be able to build up this process so people and animals have the ability to get along by acknowledging and highlighting and giving a value to and giving a price to this process, so that it's in the best interest of the people and the best interest of the animals. And that's the structure that relates to the whole process of the ecosystem and the architecture for developing the process from the ground up to be built. Yeah, let's help realize this potential across the world. Yeah, and as a bonus, just like I said at the beginning, if you stay till the end, I'll tell you that to be able to get free assets, one way to get free assets and build up free assets is to stack estimates, and also to go into the a la carte. It's like we're talking about short-term rentals, a la carte actions you can take to be able to make small actions to be able to, like, for example, on SEO clerks, for example, Or on Fiverr, for example, you can have different small actions, and these small actions amount to larger actions, in essence, to be able to get one action to be able to make a sale, for example, to go from demand to supply, starting from demand to supply, so that in essence, you can take yourself out of a process in the smallest cost possible to be able to make little small estimates. In essence, you can estimate stack for free. Estimate stacking is free. You can shop around on Fiverr, for example, for single actions, single action estimates, for example. Single action estimates can have the ability to make a bridge with that $1, $10, $15, $5 sale of an action to be able to put something on up and for sale on Amazon or on eBay or on Walmart.com, for example. And you have these employees that will take one action for like $15, $10, $5, for example. But at the same time, these window shoppings, these potential analysis, the ability to window shop and do potential analysis and stack estimates for $5, $10, $15, small risk reward processes to be able to stack these little engine potentials, to be able to stack them is free. It's a free estimate. Free estimate stacking is like asset stacking. It's like asset stacking because you're stacking potential. You're stacking the potential, and it's just like doing coupon shopping in like different things that you're shopping for, in essence, in the markets, like clothes, for example, except those are all liabilities. Typically, things that people window shop for are all liabilities, and they all lose their value once people buy them. But you can do the same with assets. Asset window shopping, in essence, on like Fiverr.com and also SEOclerks.com, for example, just to name a couple, to be able to have these type of asset type of processes. And then there's also influencers, for example, influencers on small influencer sites that have the ability to have small prices attached to them as well. So being able to connect these dots with a little bit of monetary energy to connect certain activations, it's possible to then make a sale and then get a commission that's higher than the original cost, so then be able to start the flywheel to continue to make more of this process happen, which is something that I also call prop farming, more or less like prop farming, whatever it's called, something along those lines, is to just try to give birth to the first initial egg, which has that potential to continue to try to grow more eggs, in essence, after that, if possible. And so that's what we want to hopefully try to do. But the actual asset stacking, actual estimate stacking, is like asset stacking at the same time, because you can see that potential and you can practice seeing that potential. You practice visualizing. It's like free education, but it's also like asset stacking at the same time as it's estimate stacking, because in essence, you've got that potential. It's like a potential engine, and you're just engaging the different potential, and you're feeling the different potential, to just like throwing a rock, like you're practicing throwing rocks over a bridge or over a pond, in essence, over a body of water to get it to the other side. In essence, you're practicing that, going from the demand side to the supply side, by acknowledging some of these a la carte services and connecting the dots with the small pieces of monetary energy potential, and stacking those potentials by making little small estimates to see what it takes to get it from the demand side to the supply side, leveraging small a la carte actions such as Fiverr for single actions, and then connecting that conceptually with like influencers conceptually to add a little bit more a la carte to it. But you could do it with just that single action conceptually on like SEO clerks conceptually with a la carte actions. So hopefully estimate stacking is similar to asset stacking, and hopefully it's a valuable concept and process to be able to implement. That's all for now. Hopefully we can continue to bring up the value of the animal energy around the whole world, and continue to raise awareness and raise our voices all around the world for the same cause and process and principle, hope. After all, thanks again for now. We'll let you go there. Bye Dinky Tech, bye Peace, bye. Bye Dink Tech, bye Peace, bye. And Dink Tech Change for Games Studios. Dink Tech Change for Games, bye Peace, bye.